Hello. In this presentation, we're going to be discussing the effect of a bachelor's or master's degree on the effect of instruction in an ESL classroom. This study took place at King Faisal University's preparatory year deanship in the English program. This is a first-year program to set a bar for English proficiency for students within the university. Students test into this program at 2 levels, and we're going to be discussing how the lower module and the upper module performed when they completed the intermediate and upper intermediate English courses, and whether or not having a teacher with a bachelor's or master's degree impacted their performance in the course significantly. Of course, a university education is seen as high-quality education, and high-quality education requires high-quality teachers. In the ESL context, we often see this with the requirement for university ESL positions to require a master's degree. Although common sense may assume that a teacher with a master's degree would be a better teacher than someone with a bachelor's degree, we may find that this is not necessarily the case, and that the degree itself may not define what a high-quality teacher is. The research question that we're going to be asking today is there a significant difference in performance between students who have a teacher with a bachelor's degree and students who have a teacher with a master's degree? The literature in this area has focused on 3 main areas: the relationship between teacher knowledge and practice, teacher education and practice, as well as bridging education and teacher practice with practicum-based education. Studies have shown that strong teacher knowledge shows student-centered learning, or brings about student-centered learning, whereas low teacher knowledge focuses on teacher-centered learning. Student-centered learning can be defined as when students have the opportunity to take part in the classroom, be that in projects, simply asking questions, and when the teacher and the student are interacting more dynamically. Whereas in teacher-centered learning, we're looking at a classic lecture-based classroom where the teacher tells students what they need to know. Now, this is quite commonsensical that teachers without a strong knowledge base or comfort in a subject area often rely on teacher-centered lecture-based instruction. If I don't know anything about a certain topic, it's much easier for me to read it off of a PowerPoint than to talk and engage my class in novel activities. A study by Schulman in 1987 observed a teacher whose knowledge of English literature was significantly greater than her knowledge of English grammar. And these differences of her understanding were related with significantly different styles of teaching. When teaching English literature, she was interactive and learner-centered, whereas in grammar lessons she lectured and was very teacher-centered. There are many cases like this. What this exemplifies is the significant differences often seen in teachers when their subject knowledge is strong or weak. Grossman, Wilson, and Schulman 1989 also found that teachers who lacked content knowledge would choose to lecture rather than soliciting student questions, or they might just race through a review of homework to avoid answering difficult questions asked by the class. Later research by Andrews 1999 and Board 2001 confirmed these findings and stressed the importance of creating strategies for teachers to become aware of their knowledge about language and how that can influence their teaching. In the second realm, we have teacher education and practice. We'd assume that if a teacher is educated, that would improve their knowledge and thus improve their practice. But studies have shown that there is often a disconnect between teacher education and teacher practice. Individual teachers often find it difficult to put their theory into practice. This was shown in Jafara Gohar and Kiri 2015. In their study, both university graduates and teachers with an English language teaching certification applied their techniques in their instruction and error correction, but what they applied was contrary to their beliefs of what excellent teaching entailed. An additional review of studies in Borg 2003 showed that the impact of teacher education on what teachers think, know, and do in the classroom is not reliable. The literature over the past 20 years shows that teachers do not consistently apply what they have learned about education in their teaching practice. That is, learning about teaching often does not positively impact a teacher's instruction and effectiveness in the classroom. More recent research by McDonald, Badger, and White 2001 found that students in both BA and MA second language acquisition programs came into the program with relatively similar beliefs regarding language learning as when they left the program. So we see that changes in behavior in the classroom do not guarantee changes in a teacher's knowledge base, and importantly, changes in a teacher's knowledge base do not necessitate changes in their classroom practice. Based on the literature so far, we can't expect that the level of teacher education, BA or MA, will have a consistent or predictable effect on teacher practice and in turn on student performance. Lastly, where we do see a relationship is when education and practice is bridged with practicum-based education. Jafara Gohar and Kiri's 2015 research suggests that university courses are not practical enough to modify teachers' behaviors, which suggests that in order for differences in teacher education to be associated with significant differences in student outcomes, teachers will need specific instruction in applying their knowledge to a classroom environment. As noted by Phipps in 2009, educational programs which have shown significant effect on teacher beliefs and practices are those that involve a practical application of the knowledge in the instruction, such as in the CELTA program. Evidence of the strength of a practicum to influence teachers' beliefs has been shown in a multitude of studies. In Johnson 1996, Richards et al. 1996, Borg 98, Farrell 2001, they all found that the practicum component of teaching programs significantly influenced teachers' beliefs and their classroom practices. In line with these findings, and in order to narrow the gap between teachers' beliefs and practices, Jafari, Gohar, and Kiri 2015 suggest coordinating workshops led by experienced teachers to outline practical methods to be used in the classroom, followed by regular class observations to monitor teachers' adherence to best practices. And we're going to touch upon this later as we discuss the role of module meetings and teacher observations in King Faisal's preparatory year program. But in summary, the literature shows that education is most likely to influence teacher beliefs and practices when it employs a practical component, such as observed teaching and a regular evaluation of those teaching practices. Let's take a look at who we had in this study. This study included data from two groups of students. This upper and lower module are created during the testing into the program in King Faisal University's Preparatory Year Deanship English program. When students take an entrance exam, they're split into two tiers. In the lower module, there were 32 teachers, 27 with a bachelor's degree and 5 with a master's degree, who taught the 672 students who entered the intermediate English and the 587 who completed the upper intermediate English in the following semester. In the upper module, there were 20 teachers, 6 with a bachelor's degree and 14 with a master's degree, who taught the 518 students who completed the intermediate English and the 504 who completed upper intermediate English in the following semester. It's important to note, and we'll see this in the analyses, that those in the lower module have a significantly lower understanding. So their performance is going to start and end at a lower point than those in the upper module, whose strengths and knowledge of the English language are arguably at intermediate level when they enter the program. Over this, we compared students' grades at the beginning and end of each course. The final grade shows the class average at the end of the semester, whereas the initial grade shows that class's average based on their finishing grade of the prior course. We did this in order to see how their class average would change over the semester. If teachers who have a BA or MA, if their class's average went up or down the same amount, it would show that teacher education does not have a significant impact on student performance. Whereas if those with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree and their class's grade went up or down a significantly different amount, say bachelor's degree classes went down 8 points and master's degree classes went down 1 point, then we'd see a significant difference in teacher education on student performance. In order to analyze this experiment followed a 2 by 2 by 2 full factorial pre-test, post-test experimental design. And we carried this out for both the lower and the upper module. Degree is that obtained by teacher, which is a between subject factor. The course, intermediate versus upper intermediate English, taken by the students in the program is a within subject factor, as is those students' class average, which changes from the initial to the final class average over both intermediate and upper intermediate English courses. These were analyzed using a 2 by 2 by 2 repeated measures ANOVA. And after painstakingly collecting the data and putting it into our processor, we found our results. You can see the table on the left-hand side, which shows the lower module's class averages during the intermediate course, their initial grade and their final grade, and over the upper intermediate course. As well, you can see we've split their scores based on whether their teacher had a bachelor's degree or whether their teacher had a master's degree. The initial grade for students who had a teacher with a bachelor's degree was 79.29, and those with a master's, their class had a 79.97. So we see both entering with a very close average. Now both groups' performance or score in the course dropped significantly. We see a 3-point drop over the course of the intermediate course. However, we see this 3-point drop for both students with a teacher who has a BA and for students whose teacher has a master's degree. In the upper intermediate course, which is a more demanding course, we see a more significant drop. Again, those with a teacher who have a bachelor's started the course with a lower mark than those with a master's degree. But over the length of the course, we see both have the same drop in their grade. That is a 6-point drop. For those with a teacher who has a BA, dropped from 77 to 71. And for those with a master's, we see that grade drop from a 79 to a 73. So it's a significant drop, but it's the same between both groups of teachers in both classrooms. When we take a look at the upper module, we don't see nearly the same drop in grades. As was noted earlier, these students all came into the class in the upper module with a higher English proficiency, which could be argued is at the intermediate level. Over the course, we see a small performance difference for students with a BA and MA with their entering grade, about a 1-point difference, even less. And at the end of the course, we see that same level and almost no drop over the length of the course. So we see their performance was just the same at the beginning and at the end. When this upper module took an upper intermediate English course, we see a significant drop in their score. However, just like before, this drop is the same for those with a BA and for those with an MA. That is, both groups drop approximately 3 points. And there's no significant difference between their initial score, between the BA and MA, and between the scores of the final group, whether they had a BA, their teacher had a BA or an MA. The main finding here is that there's no significant effect of teachers' education having a BA or MA on student performance. An interesting part of the PYD program is related to Jafara Gohar and Carey's 2015 study. They suggested coordinating workshops led by experienced teachers to outline practical methods to be used in the classroom, followed by regular class observations. In the PYD, this takes the form of module meetings where an experienced teacher outlines what will be covered in the following week. That includes grammar, exercises in the textbook, as well as supplementary exercises that teachers can employ. Additionally, in the PYD, teachers are regularly observed and given feedback on their teaching performance to assess how well they align with the PYD's expectations in the classroom. We may find that this extra instruction provides the practicum component, which bridges teacher knowledge and practice in the classroom, thus creating a level playing field between teachers who have a BA or an MA. However, further research is needed to determine this difference, perhaps by comparing BA and MA performance on student performance in the PYD and in courses or in English instruction programs that don't employ module meetings and regular class observations. A summary of the findings: we see in the lower module a 0.68 point difference in the initial grade between BA and MA groups, and a 0.31 difference. That is, there's a 0.3 change over the course, depending whether or not you have a teacher with a BA or an MA. So a very insignificant difference between the two groups. In the upper intermediate module, we do see a more significant difference in starting and finishing grades. However, those grades drop the same amount. And in fact, at the beginning it's a 2-point difference. Here it's a 2.32 difference. So having a teacher with a master's degree will increase your mark by 0.3. Really insignificant. In the upper module, again, we see a 0.78 difference in initial grade and 0.47 difference. This case, the teachers with a bachelor's degree perform better. However, this difference is not significant and is quite small. In the upper intermediate, we do see, again, the significant drop of 3 points. However, it's a 0.39 difference between two groups in their initial score and a 0.26 difference in the final grade. Thus, this shows us that having a teacher with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree does not significantly affect students' performance in the PYD program. Of course, there may be a larger difference in other programs that don't use such a significant amount of time in module meetings and classroom observations to ensure quality across the breadth of the program. Further research, as noted before, could compare different programs to assess whether or not there is a difference of having a BA or a MA degree on student performance, but we have not found one in the PYD. Thank you for your time today. I hope you found this useful, and I hope that you'll bring a practicum-based element to your ESL institution. All the very best.